Let's execute an immediate high-gear tactical vector shift away from the modern paramilitary tracking lines and corporate contract killings of recent fiction and plunge directly into the cold, calculation-heavy tracking grids of classical behavioral science, institutional psychiatric confinement, and the deeply atmospheric world of foundation-level forensic profiling. We are crossing the threshold directly into the subterranean Holden Vox, rain-slicked Appalachian crime scenes, and lethal interrogatory parameters of psychological warfare with the silence of the LAMBS, the exceptional, pulse-pounding second structural deployment anchoring the legendary Hannibal Lecter series, and the absolute undisputed blueprint of the modern psychological thriller genre by the master craftsman of high-concept investigative prose, Thomas Harris. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers a thrilling look at an operational crossroads where an unpolished FBI Academy asset, a brilliant locked-away cannibalistic psychiatrist, and an absolute defense of deductive material tracking metrics collide at terminal velocity. Let's lay out the strategic narrative grid. If you are a fan of high-octane, slow-burn criminal profiling thrillers where an ambitious, hyper-determined female trainee must navigate an absolute maze of institutional misogyny, labyrinthine asylum corridors, and a deadly ring of active serial murder traps while running a blind survival loop inside a compromised federal agency ecosystem, where an analytical mind uses deep psychological trading, forensic entomology profiling, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an active, skin-harvesting apex predator, and where the author utilizes an incandescent quid pro quo interrogatory exchange unearthing a lethal behavioral conundrum diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural survival perimeters, this book is engineered to lock you in. Harris completely dominates the forensic Gothic noir dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating institutional paranoia, and heavy psychological depth popularized by genre vargs like John Sanford, Patricia Carnwell, James Patterson, and Jeffrey Deaver, while treating high-level clinical psychopathology, behavioral science mechanics, and protective law enforcement draft grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on a horrific active hunting pattern across the American Midwest, a masterfully calculated blueprint of a serial killer profile operating under a severe, calculation-heavy handicap for local law enforcement. A mysterious entity designated Buffalo Bill is systematically abducting and skinning young women, leaving federal tracking agencies completely out of actionable leads. The official diagnostic metrics of the FBI's behavioral science unit flash white hot. The head of the division, Jack Crawford, engages an unconventional tactical asset, Clemmy Starling, an ungraduated Quantico trainee with massive intuitive potential. To extract the critical cognitive parameters required to map Buffalo Bill's psychological architecture, Starling must infiltrate a heavily monitored maximum security psychiatric vault and engage a terrifyingly brilliant source, Dr. Hannibal Lecter. Their collective dialogue mechanisms lock behind reinforced barriers, their entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring mutual psychological threat factors, parsing complex childhood trauma histories, and shielding their vulnerable tracking nodes from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless counteroffensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches their active scanning perimeter. Buffalo Bill abducts Catherine Martin, the daughter of a high-ranking United States senator. The standard boundaries of routine bureaucratic investigation and local jurisdictional oversight crumble, and our central protagonist, the young Southern-born trainee operating behind a fragile defensive shield, runs completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. She is thrust directly into an active, invisible war of information, where deceptive asylum directors, highly manipulative media leaks, and calculation-heavy political interventions launch aggressive countermeasures to permanently disrupt her investigative data stream. The tactical parameters instantly explode as their historical and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the dark basement cells of Baltimore and the decaying rural structures of Ohio into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our veteran survivalist researcher is forced to deploy her massive intuitive tradecraft, environmental mapping skills, and raw document tracing stamina to maintain her perimeter before the killer completes his latest transformation sequence. When deceptive red herrings, horrific institutional escapes, and calculation-heavy sensory deprivation scenarios launch aggressive plays to delete her witness trail, her survival instincts engage her final deployment tracks. Every midnight vault excavation, every silent choice to follow a lead into a pitch-black basement behind standard backup screens, and every intense moment of channeling raw psychological resilience chips away at her reliance on original defensive rules. What follows is an exceptional high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the psychopathic empire's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Harris reveals that the true victory requires more than just firing a service weapon or fulfilling an assignment. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of rational empirical truth and personal identity against a cold, calculating machine of human depravity.
While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes psychological trials shifts the clock into its terminal phase, proving that historical emotional hazards have tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure her status within the Bureau, our resilient heroine must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a psychological mystery suspense, forensic pathology thriller, institutional crime drama, high-velocity gothic noir masterpiece that treats deep criminal logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one whispered clue triggers a fatal tactical breakout energy, where a sudden pause in a secure interview cell, an unexpected shift in an inmate's protective physical posture during an active mental confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that a monster has completely mapped your personal vulnerabilities, carries massive structural weight. Harris writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the cold, metallic hum of high-security cell blocks, the oppressive, heavy atmosphere of an autopsy room during a rainstorm, and the distinct, subtle scent of formaldehyde, old stone vaults, expensive hand cream, copper evidence, night vision lenses, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this franchise masterpiece into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance realistic criminological scientific mechanics and genuine high-stakes behavioral tradecraft alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep conceptual hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable, superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern institutional and systemic underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking personal breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. The Silence of the Lambs is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes mystery fiction and dark investigative suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputdownable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating master manipulator, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your forensic survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So, secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the doc.